Hi storytellers, and welcome back to the Create a Story You Love YouTube channel. In today's video, I'll be sharing some tips on how you can write your novel faster. These are my own lessons learned as I've continued to write novels. But before we get going on the tips, just a quick note. For authors, sometimes we compare ourselves to other writers, and I have personally struggled with this, big time. Especially when I see so many of my author friends writing a lot of books a year, and I feel like I can't write that many books. At least not right now. I think that'll come where I'll write faster, but I still might not reach their level of how many books that they write. If they write 10 books, I'm not sure that I could do that, 10 books a year. But that's the thing. We don't need to compare ourselves with other writers. We need to do the best that we can do, each of us as authors, right? As writers. And, some people write 1,000 words a day. Some people do 500 words a day. Some people do 100 words a day. And that's all they can do. It's okay. I want to encourage you to just let it go, because we don't want to get caught up in comparing ourselves to other people. We can get into a toxic relationship with ourselves and with other authors that way. Every author is constantly working to get better at something in their writing journey, because we all have, things to learn, right? Each of us have things to learn. And when I started, I could only write around 200 words a day because I had so many fears and worries and so much anxiety around my writing when I first started. And that, those small word count goals was enough for me, and I couldn't do more than that, just because of all the angst, I guess you could say, that I felt around my writing. And so I just want to encourage you to just relax with your writing, and I really believe that will help you reach your goals faster. On that note, here are some ideas that have helped me to write my books faster. Tip number one: get rid of distractions. If you have notifications on your desktop or laptop or phone, it's likely that you won't get as much done as you would like to. There's things we can do. Turn on airplane mode on your phone. I have an app that I use, not as consistently as I should, but it's called Freedom app, and you can literally block out the internet, parts of the internet that you want. So I usually block out, Facebook, YouTube, because those are my go-tos when I need distraction. So that app really, it's really helps a lot. So that's, one idea. I encourage you to turn off the notifications on your desktop, laptop, or phone, because that will really minimize distractions. And then, if you're living in a situation where you have a lot of people around you, if you can carve out time in your day where you can be completely distraction free. I know that can be tricky sometimes, right? But if you have those conversations where you just say, I need 30 minutes here, or I need an hour, or whatever time you want to write, or that you have the time available to write, just have those conversations, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that you will be able to have that time. I just want to encourage you to find that time in the day where you can be distraction free. And some ideas that help you to write faster would be to set a timer: 15 minutes, 25 minutes, 40 minutes. Removing distractions will help you to write faster. And if you set a timer, sometimes when we have a deadline, it helps us to really work toward that deadline so that we get it done. Another way to do it, you could write a set number of pages that day. You just decide, I'm going to write 1 page, I'm going to write 3 pages today, or 10 pages. A good example is, best-selling romance novelist Debbie Macomber writes 20 pages a day, and she sets a number for how many pages that she will write that day, and that's just her number. She writes 20 pages a day, I think 5 days a week, and then it starts to make sense that she can, I don't know how many books, I think it's around 4 that she writes every year. So it makes sense that she can get that many books written, right? If she's set that but that's her goalpost for the day. So, you know, I encourage you to try both ideas. Try one day doing a set number of pages, and then the next day try doing a timer and see which one works best for you. Tip number 2, plan in advance what you will write that day. I really want to encourage you to do this because this will really, really help your writing. If you can visualize your scenes in your mind's eye ahead of time and then jot down what you are seeing about that scene, it will really help you to write the story faster. When I can see it in my mind's eye, if I can see that story in my mind's eye, and I write it down, then there's a good chance that I will be able to just start writing without needing to stop. And this works whether you're a plotter or a pantser. It's important to have a good idea of the scenes that you'll write that day. So I just know for myself, if I sit down to write and I don't have a really good idea of where the story is heading, then the story goes slower. Simply because I'm not sure, I'm a little hesitant on where it's going, right? But if you have a good idea of where it's headed, then you'll be able to write, to the end of that scene, or if your goal is to write to the end of that chapter and you know the hook that you want to have to end that chapter, then the writing will go faster because it's almost like you're writing to like a goal or a point, or almost like a climax of that scene or of that chapter. I find that really helps me if I kind of can see it where it's going to end. If I just take 5 minutes and visualize the scene and write it down, like I use Scrivener, so I write the scene in like on there's a on the right hand side of Scrivener. Maybe I'll need to do a video at some point on Scrivener, but there's a part on Scrivener where you can write down your notes on the right hand side. And so I often just write down my notes there on Scrivener, and then I will just keep writing, right? And I find that very helpful because I can just look over and see, okay, where am I at? Oh, okay, so this is what I want in this scene, and then I'll start writing. All right, and so these are things that just make things go smoothly. And then after you're writing, done writing each scene or whatever, write what the next logical scene would be. So you've written one scene, what would be, the next logical scene? So someone just had a fight, maybe it's a romance, and the hero and the heroine just had a fight, and she walks out because she's just perturbed with him. So the next scene then would be her reaction, right, to that fight, right? So because that's how stories are written. It's action and reaction, right? And so then that next scene would be about what's her reaction, what's her emotional reaction to that. Is she going to call a friend? Is she going to go jogging to work off some steam or whatever? Do you know what I mean? Like, what's her reaction? And so visualize what just happened on the screen and think about what happens next in your story, because that will help you with the action and the reaction, right? And then when you come back the next day to write your story, it can make a huge difference on what happens in the story and how quickly you can get back into it. Because I find what helps me is when I read through what I just wrote the previous day, and then I can come back to it, and then I will get a good picture in my mind's eye. Oh, okay, this is where the scene needs to go next. And it's like I'll be able to picture it in my mind, and then I can write quicker. So those are just some thoughts, and I hope that helps you. So tip number 3, let go of the feeling that your writing needs to be perfect. And this is one that I also have struggled with, that whole feeling like it needs to be perfect right out of the chute, So it's okay to just let the words come, especially in a rough draft. In the first draft, think of writing your story like literally like you're writing for an audience of one, which is you, right? Write the story for yourself first, right? And just enjoy it. Enjoy the process of writing this story. Writing should be fun. I think first and foremost, writing should be fun. It is a job, I guess you could put it that way, but it should, first and foremost, I think it should be fun. It should be enjoyable, because I feel like that gets translated from the writer to the reader. I feel like in some books that I read, I can feel if the writer actually was enjoying writing the story. And that sounds strange, I know, but sometimes you can feel it through the words. And so just think of it as you are writing for yourself. The first story, the first draft, you are writing it for yourself. And I get it. It's easy to feel intimidated by the blank page. That was exactly how I felt when I wrote my first historical romance. I was very worried that I needed to get the words just right and that I would, portray history accurately. And so I poured over 10 history books just for that first book alone and spent a year researching. And so I think in that case, it was a bit of overdoing it. And looking back, I think I took more time than I needed to researching the history because I was procrastinating because of my fear and intimidation, right? I think that can happen to just any author where you'll procrastinate because you are feeling fear and intimidation. So I think that's normal, but I want to encourage you that if you're intimidated by the blank page and you're questioning things like, am I getting the exact words? Am I pulling across the right emotion? Then I want to encourage you not to focus on those questions specifically. I mean, at least not in the first draft. You can think about those details when you're in the polishing stage of your manuscript. But I want to encourage you in the first draft to write quickly and let go of, nitpicky word choices and just let the story flow out of you. Then when you're editing, you can revise and change the words at that point. Say what needs to be said and then let it go. Embrace that feeling of flow. Getting into the flow state when you are writing a story is really the best and funnest part of writing for me. And you will know when you get there because it's like almost everything around you seems to quiet down and you feel like you have stepped inside the movie screen of your story. I mean, literally for me, it feels like I'm watching a movie screen in my mind and I'm just writing what I'm seeing. Sometimes it can literally feel like I'm taking dictation. This sounds weird, I know, but the getting into story flow is just such a wonderful feeling. So I encourage you to embrace that feeling of flow. It's okay, be patient because it might take 10, 15, 20 minutes of just consistently thinking of your story, beginning to write, to get into that state of story flow. But you'll get there. Just stick with the story, stick with the writing process, and you'll get to the point where the story comes to you easier. Tip number 4, do your best to keep at the writing and stay consistent. If you write, you're working on a novel, and then say you take a break for 2 weeks, 3 weeks until you pick up the story again, it will be more difficult to pick it up than if you would say write your draft, every day or even 5 days a week. The consistency of it will help keep the story in your mind. So visualize what you are writing and every day write that scene at the end of your what you've written that day. Write what you're going to write, what you see in your mind's eye that you need to write for the next day, and then you'll be ready for the next day, right? You won't have to do a lot of pre-thinking because you've already did that the day before, right? And so if you take Sundays off, which a lot of writers do, or whichever day, that's fine, because taking a day or two off, story will still be there. But if you're say you take 4 to 5 days, between writing sprints, it might take a little longer to get back into the story. So I want to encourage you to be fairly consistent every week, even 3 to 4 days a week writing, because it'll help the story stay with you easier, right? It just takes longer to get back into it. But it's the rough draft. Let the flow of the words come out of you. Tip number 5, explore different times of day and locations to write your novel. You have a routine, which you're normally when you when you write. So maybe maybe you write early in the morning, and it's the quiet time of day, and if that works for you, then that's good. You stick with that. But maybe it's early in the morning and you're struggling to write. Well, try late at night. Try, after the kids go to bed. Try writing, and see, does that make a difference? Does the story seem to flow easier in the evening? Or say you're working a full-time job, but you have an hour lunch break. Try writing during that lunch break and see if the story can come to you then. There's different ways, and try different locations. Write at a coffee shop. Does that help or hinder your writing? Because there's background noise with people talking and eating and drinking their coffee. No, does that help you or does that hinder your writing? Or if you are driving the kids around a lot, you could start writing in your car, and see if as you're waiting for them to pick them up, 15-20 minutes, maybe you can write during that time. Just pull out your phone, start writing, or you could just take your laptop with you wherever you go, and you could write that way. Just try different things. Try writing in different areas of your home. And so maybe you tried it in your office, but maybe you want to try writing in the living room. Does it seem that the flow comes easier when you are writing in the living room? Because I think it does affect us. It affects our sometimes it can where we write can affect us mentally. But this is why if you just experiment and try different places, and just see how the words flow, and then track it. So write it down. I was at the coffee shop today and the words seemed to flow easier today. I don't know why, but I tried it. And I was at the coffee shop, in the afternoon between 1 and 4, and that was a great time for me to write. Or if you find that one works better than the other, then, if you can, stick with that, because then you'll get, the words written faster, right? I encourage you to experiment with some of the tips that we just talked about and see if they will help you to write your novel faster. You might even want to try 1 tip a day for each of the 5 days in the work week. That way, hopefully it won't seem overwhelming or seem too stressful if you just do 1 a day, and just see what works for you. And then I encourage you to, if you have like a notebook handy, or maybe you have a software that you use, but track your progress. Write down how you explored each of these tips, what worked and what didn't. So like, for example, if you are trying different writing locations, you can write down, I tried the coffee shop and I was there between 10 and 11 in the morning, and this is how many words I got written. But maybe on a different day you tried writing in the coffee shop between 1 and 3, and maybe you got more words written, and you can write that down. And you can see, which really worked for you. So I encourage you to write down how you explored each of the 5 tips that we talked about, and what worked and what didn't. And that way you'll know how to move forward, that you can really write your novel faster. So I hope these ideas inspired you and gave you helpful tips to finish your novel. And if you found this video helpful, hit the like button and subscribe, and leave a comment below the video. Thanks for joining me today, and happy writing.